Yeah, the first thing I want to ask is what drew you to this story?
Uh, I'm a fan of country music. I think Hank Williams' life has always been intriguing to me from the first time I started learning about it. I think his influence in terms of his literary influence from the time that he started writing what he wrote and the people that he did influence that I became huge fans of, the Dylans and the John Prynes and the Randy Newmans and the Kurt Cobains and Tom Petty, anybody that you want to talk about. Uh, will tell you that he influenced them. So you add all that together, and then you had this really, really foreshortened life, just cut short at this incredibly young age, after still creating this enormous wealth of music. I think it's for me. It just became a sort of a obsession to say I want people to learn about this guy, and certainly this part of his life.
I think it's really astonishing when you're told at the end of the film that he racked up like 36 hits and he was only 29.
I know.
It's crazy.
Crazy, crazy. And when you look at pictures of him, for real, he looked like he was 50 when he died. For real, he did. He looked much older. I mean, you would never say he was 29. But he barely, by the way, 3 months into being 29.
Huh.
I mean, the last year of his life was insane. What he went, the number of times he was on the road, the women he divorced, the woman he got pregnant, the woman he married. That's an intense life.
Was there ever any opposition or even nervousness in any quarter about casting a British actor to play an American icon?
Not by me. I didn't have any qualms because once I met him and got to know him and talked to him and we hung out together and I watched his performances and other things, I was convinced that he'd be great. Yeah, because I say the people who complain about that, to me, it's sort of ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like we could take any movie and say, how can you cast that? Why was this person this color? Why was this person this height? Why was this person a woman? I mean, in The Night Manager, John le Carré, they changed one of the characters from a man to a woman. What's her name? Coleman.
Olivia Colman,
Yeah, they changed her character. It's like, whoa, you can't do that. It's a man. Well, no, that's not really the point. The point is you're telling a story. The point is he's not Hank Williams. He's portraying Hank Williams. What we were trying to do is get a visceral representation that moves you in an emotional, powerful way because not of because of the art of the experience you're having at the moment, not because of something that happened 60 years ago. And so, who cares where they came from? It doesn't really matter. I don't. But yes, of course, because there are people that have opinions about all kinds of things. They should be channeled in other directions, in my opinion. But you know what? I didn't care at all. It never bothered me one bit. I was convinced I had the right guy. And then I'd watch the movie and then tell me I had the wrong guy,
One of perhaps the key relationship in the film is Hank's relationship with his first wife,
Yeah.
Audrey. What is it about the two of them, do you think, that initially drew them to each other, but then ultimately meant that they couldn't stay together?
To me, that's one of the very important primary reasons that I made the movie, because I'm fascinated about men and women and the relationships that they have, and especially under such a severe spotlight and so young. Remember how young they are. They're in their early 20s. I think that she was really fiery and incredibly ambitious, and that he was drawn to very powerful women. He didn't have a father in his life. His father disappeared. His mother was a very, very potent woman who was domineering. I think Audrey had a lot of that in that. I think he was really concerned about his work, and he was glad to have a woman in his life who was willing to look after everything else. But then he had this woman who not only wanted to look after everything else, she wanted to be a performer. And she had this great ambition. As Hank said, it's not in the movie, but Hank said, it's a damn thing to have a wife that wants to sing, but it's hell having one who wants to sing and can't. So, he had this woman with great ambition, very headstrong, who he was passionate about, loved, was turned on by, but ultimately, they fought all the time. And one of the things I'm most proud of in this movie is the fights. They're intense fights, and they're very, very real. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, I think a lot of people that really respond to the movie come out of it and go, man, that guy knows. Hey, marriage ain't easy, and that's one of the things I was drawn about.
Do you think if Hank had been born maybe a generation later, 2 generations later, he could have been saved because people would have spotted what he was doing to himself sooner because we're more aware of these problems?
That's a really interesting question. I doubt it.
don't
I mean,
think?
well, or else we wouldn't have watched Amy Winehouse last year. You know, I think that that's a really complicated thing. The thing is, yes, many people that have in our lives, almost everybody has somebody in their life that is suffering from some problem. Sometimes it's just a health problem. Sometimes it's an addiction. We all know somebody like that. But what happens is when that addiction is sort of tied to somebody of enormous, you know, earning potential and glory, it becomes harder for people to actually confront them. You know, I mean, Prince is only 57 when he went down. Michael Jackson's in his 40s. Elvis Presley, 43 years old. And then you work your way down to Joplin and Hendrix. And I don't know. I think there's probably a less likely chance these days, but certainly maybe just, you know, maybe a little bit better chance people would be saved. Consistently, it just proves itself out.